If you are a computer science student, you likely have or will be introduced to coding C++, and in many cases, your instructor will have you use a Linux operating system, which can make it difficult to work on assignments from your personal Windows computer. In this video, I will show you how to program in C++ using Visual Studio on a Windows computer. First, we will need to download Visual Studio, so navigate to your web browser, and in the address bar, type in visualstudio.microsoft.com/vs. Here, we're going to want to select the Download Visual Studio and Community 2019. Save this to your computer. So we're going to run the installer. Here, you're going to want to select Desktop Development with C++, and then click Install. This might take a while, so I'm going to speed through this part. Once Visual Studio 2019 is installed, restart your computer, and then we can start using it. Alright, after we've restarted our computer, we can get rid of this Visual Studio Community executable, and in our search bar, we'll just search for Visual Studio 2019. And we'll pin it to our taskbar for later use. Here, you won't need an account to use it, so you can just hit Not Now, Maybe Later. You can choose a theme. I like to use the dark theme. You'll have a 30-day trial before you'll have to sign in. Since this is your guys' first time using Visual Studio, you won't have to sign in. But I've had it for more than 30 days, so I need to sign in. For now, we're just going to hit Continue Without Code. Alright, so now that we've successfully ran Visual Studio, we can go ahead and create a C++ project. So we're going to go to File, New, Project. And we're going to hit Empty Project for C++. We'll give it a name, so we'll call it Lab 001. Some things to note here: you can move around different boxes, so like the Solution Explorer, I like to have it on the left side, and then Properties, I just put it right down below Solution Explorer. Alright, so you have the left sidebar, Solution Explorer. This is where it shows all the directories for all your files in your project. Source files will have your CPP files. Resource files could have text files, miscellaneous image files would go here, and then header files would have the .h files. So we're going to go ahead and right click on source files, add new item, and then we're just going to call it main.cpp. So you'll notice that this box right here, main.cpp, it's a little text editor. So we're going to go ahead and include iOS stream. We're also going to do using namespace std, and then we'll give it the title int main, and have it return 0. And then for testing purposes, we'll just create a little for loop. To compile and run our program, we can click on Debug up here and then Start Without Debugging. Alternatively, we can hit Control plus F5. This will run your program, and as you can see, it output Hello World 10 times. If, when you run your program, the black output console flashes and goes away, this means your application is not set to console. To fix this, go to Project, then the name of your project, Properties, and then under Linker and System, set your subsystem to console. Alternatively, you can type in system pause. This will pause the console screen before it terminates. Keep in mind that this is a Windows command, so if you export your code to a Linux terminal and compile and run it, it will break on this command. Each time you compile and run your program, an executable will be updated for it. You can find this executable by right-clicking on the top directory of your project. Then click on Open Folder in File Explorer. Under the Debug folder, there will be a file called the name of your project.exe. This is a standalone application, your standalone application, that you can put on any computer and run. Visual Studio, in my opinion, is much more efficient and easy to use than any other text editor for C++. It has IntelliSense. This means that when you're typing something out, it will automatically give you suggestions. This is really cool because it allows you to see what commands exist and makes coding a heck of a lot smoother. It also has real-time error checking. So, for example, if you were to create a variable and give it a value, and later on in your code you reference that variable, and for some reason you change the name so it doesn't conflict with other objects, Visual Studio will recognize that the value that you reference, var, no longer exists. This is great because it allows you to see errors way before you compile and run your program, which can save a lot of time. Visual Studio also has a ton of shortcuts. You can see the key commands for these shortcuts because they are usually displayed right on the right side of whatever button that executes them. Some really cool shortcuts to know are the quick commenting one. This also has its own button. Right under Search Visual Studio, there's this button, Comment Out Selected Lines. This lets you select a bunch of lines, and if you click this button, it'll comment them out. And the Uncomment Selected Lines. Alternatively, you can see that there is a key command, Control-K and then Control-C. So we could highlight this, Control-K, Control-C, comments it out. And Control-K, Control-U, uncomments it. Another really cool command is the find feature. Say we had a bunch of variables called var2, and we wanted to give it a different name, but we didn't want to go through each var2, because say we have like 100 of these referenced. So we can do Control F, and it will search for all the known instances of var2, and to replace it, just hit this drop down button, and here we can give it a new name, variable2. And then hit replace all, which is this button right beside the X and right next to the replace next. So this will replace all instances of var2 to variable2, which is very convenient. If you are a computer programmer, in my opinion, knowing how to debug is by far the most valuable skill to learn. This is because debugging helps you clearly see and understand exactly what your program is doing. Knowing is half the battle, especially when it comes to programming, and that is why debugging is so important. In Visual Studio, debugging is very easy. To start debugging, we first need to set a breakpoint. on the left of these numbers here, on this lighter gray bar, we can left click, and it'll create this red dot, which is a breakpoint. Now that we have a breakpoint, we can start debugging. So to debug, click on debug and then start debugging, or we can click the keyboard shortcut F5. Now our Visual Studio will change its layout. Some things to note here are we now have these controls up here, the stop debugging, the restart, show next statement, step into, step over, and step out. What debugging did was when we set the breakpoint, it stopped at this line of code right before it executed. So if we wanted to step over onto the next line, we would click on this step over button. Also, say we wanted to track certain values of certain objects, and I would be one of them, and variable 2 would be another. This will automatically put into focus variables to keep track of, but we would like to create our own. So we can highlight the value and then right click and then click on Add Watch. Under Watch 1 here, it'll watch whatever items we put into it. So we put I into it, and then we could also put variable 2 into it. So we'll add watch to variable 2 as well. So space was allocated for I and variable 2, but they hadn't been assigned values yet. That's why they have these very large negative values. So after we step over past this line, I will become 0, and variable 2 will still stay that large number. So we're going to click on step over. And we can see I was set to 2, and we can keep clicking on step over. And what it'll do is it'll just loop through our for loop 10 times, all the while changing the I value till it hits 9. And then now we just hit our variable, and you can see in the console what it's outputting. So it output hello world 10 times. And then here our variable 2 is set to 10, and now we step over again. It was incremented by 1. So that is debugging. And when you're dealing with data structures, this is an incredibly useful tool, because automatically you'll be able to tell exactly what everything is and know exactly where you might have gone wrong. Some other useful things to know are creating classes. Creating classes is so easy in Visual Studio. All you need to do is on the header file, click Add New Item, and click on C++ class. You can give it a name. Say we're going to create a pair class. So we're just going to hit enter, and then it'll say, oh, this is going to be your class name. This is the header file. This is the CPP file. We're just going to click OK. Pragma once is identical to if not defined. And you can see our class pair has been defined, and our pair.cpp has been defined as included pair.h, which is our header. So say we're going to create a private variable, and say we create 2 integers, so int x and int y. And in our public, we'll create a function called add, and an overloaded function that defines the pair. So pair that takes in 2 ints, int I, int j. So we did all that, and as you can see, our real-time error checking is coming in handy. It shows this green squiggly that says definition for add not found. And in our pair.cpp, there is no add. So this is really cool because it will create it for us. So we click on this little screwdriver and click Create Definition of Add in pair.cpp. And this little clip snippet will appear, and as you can see, it created the add function for our class. So in here, we can go ahead and define what our add function does. So in our add function, we're going to have it return this x plus this y. And then we're going to define our pair function. So here we're going to click on the screwdriver again, create definition pair, and in here we can set x and y to I and j. So this x equals I, this y equals j. And then in our main, we can reference our pair class by just doing include pair.h. And here we'll create a pair. And we'll see out variable 3.add. And then we'll run our program, and we can see that 5 and 3 are added together to form 8. So that is Visual Studio. I hope you guys will utilize this amazing piece of software to create amazing applications. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down in the comment section below. Have a wonderful day. This has been Andrew with Coffee Coder, signing off.